Mad Max Fury Road is essentially one big chase scene. But the filmmakers used familiar archetypes to transform that chase into a story about redemption, hope, and liberation. We're talking all about it this week in Kaden's Movie Club. Spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen it, beat it. Fury Road is the fourth Mad Max film, but you don't have to know anything about the past movies to understand this one. And that's because the idea of Mad Max is that he's supposed to be a legendary figure, one that shows up in folklore and campfire stories. The creator, George Miller, never intended for there to be a detailed continuity across the films. He intended them to be standalone stories where Mad Max functions as an archetype. And just to make sure we're all on the same page, archetype is the term we use to refer to a recognizable symbol or theme that we repeatedly see in stories. So a character archetype would be a specific kind of character with recognizable traits that we've seen over and over. For instance, the comic relief character. They're usually a companion to the main character who is primarily there to lighten the tone.
Ha, word!
Mad Max Fury Road is filled with archetypes, and that's not a bad thing, especially when the goal is to make this story feel like it has that mythic quality. It helps if the audience can quickly identify types of characters without having to listen to a bunch of exposition. If you had never seen a Mad Max movie and jumped right into Fury Road, you might have wondered if you were missing some context because you're immediately thrown into the middle of this post-apocalyptic civilization. But you're not. We're expected to be able to gather all of the necessary details to understand this story just from the context clues, and a big part of that is recognizable archetypes. So what kind of archetype is Max? He's the Wanderer. Even though this is a world run by powerful groups, he's independent of all that. He lives on his own. We see this archetype in westerns and samurai movies. At the start of a story, a wanderer is also defined by their moral ambiguity. Because they have no allegiances, they won't necessarily be on the good or bad side.
A man reduced to a single instinct. Survive.
They usually get roped into some local conflict and choose to help begrudgingly. But over the course of the story, they start to help in a more heroic way. Here's our first shot of the movie. You've got the silhouette, you've got the vehicle, you've got the horizon. Very much like a cowboy, a horse, and the Western Plains. This area of the world is run by three primary groups that each have control over a valuable resource. Max is pulled into the story when he's captured by one of those groups. It's a religious cult run by a man named Immortan Joe. His followers, known as War Boys, worship him, and he maintains power by controlling water. So we see the archetype of a cult leader in Immortan Joe. He seeks power, he wants loyalty, and he ultimately doesn't really care about his followers, but uses their devotion for his own gain. We don't need to know everything about him to recognize how he operates in this story. We also learn that the reason Max was captured is because some of the War Boys suffer from a disease they call half-life. We're given the clue that this is probably cancer as a result of living in the irradiated wasteland. To treat the sick War Boys, such as Nux, the cult utilizes blood transfusions from healthy people, so Max becomes Nux's blood bag. We're then introduced to Imperator Furiosa. She's like a general in Immortan Joe's army, and she's driving the war rig on what should be a routine supply run. Once she's left the Citadel, she betrays Immortan Joe and launches an escape, but she's not just saving herself. She's also rescuing 5 women who Joe was keeping captive as his wives. So Furiosa is a character that's built up loyalty in the villain's inner circle only to betray him in an effort to do what she thinks is right. She's a reluctant hero, which is another kind of archetype. We gained more context about her journey in the prequel movie Furiosa, but when Fury Road came out, this was the only context we needed to understand her character. When Immortan Joe discovers her betrayal, he sends a huge war party out to catch Furiosa and bring his wives back. And we then see what our story archetype is. It's a chase. The entire narrative is structured around hunter and prey. How can Furiosa outrun or outwit her pursuers? And Max gets pulled into the conflict because Nux wants to join the war party so that he can die in battle, which he believes will result in a glorious afterlife in Valhalla. So he straps Max to his car to continue being his source of healthy blood. Furiosa uses a massive desert storm to shake off some of her opponents, and Max is also able to use it to get free. When he first encounters Furiosa though, he's operating simply as a survivor. Again, he has no allegiance, so he defeats her in a fight and tries to take the war rig, leaving her and the other women behind. Furiosa has prepared the war rig with a sequence of kill switches so that only she can drive it. She and Max are forced into a temporary alliance since Immortan Joe and his army are still actively pursuing them.
You want that thing off your face?
So the story is set up through the use of recognizable character and story structure. We have the Wanderer pulled into a chase between our reluctant hero and our cult leader. So how does the story resonate with us? That's when we come to thematic archetypes. I'd say there's 3 main themes that Fury Road is presenting to the audience: redemption, hope, and liberation. Both Max and Furiosa are characters seeking redemption. Furiosa is a high-ranking officer in the army of a warlord, and Max is haunted by visions of people from his past that he failed to protect. All we need to know is that both of them are carrying guilt. The post-apocalypse has created a cruel and hopeless world, but Fury Furiosa and the women she's rescuing choose to hope that there's something better out there. This is represented by the green place. Furiosa remembers being taken as a child from a place that still had life, unlike the barren wasteland, and she calls it the green place. Her entire goal is to get herself and the other women there. And lastly, this is a world built on enslavement, especially for women. Immortan Joe's cult is extremely male-centric, with women treated mostly as another resource to create more followers. Furiosa and the women with her aren't just escaping to go live in a different place, they're trying to escape their whole perception of reality where they've been brought up as less than human. And the physical journey these characters all take, the simple chase where they're trying to outrun Immortan Joe, is actually them chasing redemption, hope, and liberation. And the movie makes sure to represent this pursuit of a better life as a lot more than a simple drive in the desert. It's one giant battle. Which is why at its core, Fury Road is very much an action movie. I think sometimes people hear action and think it refers to a sequence in a movie that has no real purpose other than to be exciting. But good action always contributes to the overall story. It advances stakes, informs character, and enforces themes. And it can look frickin' sick while doing it. Fury Road and most of the Mad Max series features the heavy use of practical effects and stunt work.
I always love to have some practical live action element in there to ground the shot.
A lot of the action you see in the movie was filmed for real with minimal CGI enhancements. It made for a difficult filming experience, but George Miller must have felt pretty justified when the movie went on to receive 10 Oscar nominations, winning 6 of them in basically all of the technical categories. Through a great blend of in-camera work and post-production stylizing, this movie felt like a fresh new vision of a gritty post-apocalyptic world. But those elements are all still in service of the story. It's through those action scenes that we come to see Max and Furiosa slowly start to trust each other and become more compassionate because of it. It's where we see each of Immortan's wives transition from needing to be saved to saving themselves. Even Nux experiences his own process of liberation from false beliefs Immortan Joe instilled in him. One of the most important scenes comes at the end of our second act. The group has reunited with the female warriors that Furiosa was taken from when she was a child. It seems like they've succeeded in their journey until they find out there is no green place. It died out just like the rest of the wasteland, and those few warriors are all that's left of Furiosa's people. This is the low point for all of the characters, in which it seems like their efforts to find redemption, hope, and liberation have been for nothing. They've been fighting and enduring this whole journey to find out there is no reward. But then they decide to launch a risky plan. Because Immortan Joe's forces have been pursuing them, the Citadel is undefended. They choose to take it back. In the third act, we enter our final leg of the chase, where everyone is racing to get right back to where they started. This can feel like the opposite of progress, but the characters' changed perspective is what's important. The journey out into the wasteland in the first place required the characters to believe that they might be able to find what they were looking for. They had to hope. And for a moment, it seemed like that hope was for nothing, but what it did was change them as people. Max has every opportunity to leave on his own, but chooses to rejoin Furiosa with a plan to take the Citadel. Furiosa has realized that she and the others won't be able to find some perfect world out in the wasteland, but they have found the courage and hope they need to now go back and change the world they already knew. The journey back to take the Citadel represents these characters reclaiming their humanity in a world that has tried to force them to leave it behind. In the final battle, we see them fighting not just for self-preservation, but to preserve this new possibility for each other. And Nux makes the ultimate sacrifice, dying in battle just like he hoped, but not because he thinks it will give him glory in the afterlife. It's because he's come to love and respect those around him and chooses to do it for the greater good. Furiosa manages to defeat Immortan Joe and takes back the Citadel as its new leader. We then see Mad Max slipping away into the crowd, but sharing a moment of understanding with Furiosa. They both still represent their archetypes. He will continue to be the wanderer, and she will continue to be the reluctant hero, but they have been changed by the physical and emotional journey they took together. And next week, we're going to take a look at a movie that uses a chase to ask whether or not the letter of the law and true justice are one and the same. The Fugitive follows the story of a surgeon who is wrongfully accused in the death of his own wife. When he goes on the run, he sets out to try and prove his innocence, but that becomes really difficult when he's pursued by a relentless US Marshal. So here's some questions to keep in mind while you watch. How does the story quickly establish the two primary characters, Richard Kimball and Deputy Gerard? What do you need to know about them, and what moments reveal that? What do you think the movie is trying to say through Gerard's character arc? Does the dynamic between Kimball and Gerard remind you of any other famous stories? Which ones and why? How do you feel about the reveal for who did commit the crime? Do you feel that scenario still feels applicable today? So let's chat about Mad Max Fury Road in the comments, and I'll see you back here next Sunday to discuss The Fugitive. And if you want to stay in the know about Movie Club, you know where to go.